You've been through more than most people know. The kind of pain that doesn't always show on the outside. The kind that doesn't have a name but lives in your body like a silent guest. It lingers in your chest when you wake up. It hides behind your smile. It colors the way you see the world, even on the days that seem normal. And if you're being honest, there have been moments when you've wondered, was it all meaningless? Was it punishment, bad luck, a cosmic mistake? But there's a truth your soul has been trying to whisper to you through the pain, a deeper knowing that's easy to forget in this world, but impossible to erase completely. You didn't come here to live a life without hardship. You didn't come here for perfection. You came here to remember something sacred. Through contrast, through heartbreak, through fire. Your soul chose this life, not because it wanted you to suffer, but because it knew that only by walking through the darkest valleys would you uncover your truest light. That light was never meant to be handed to you. It was meant to be forged inside you. There's a hidden mission buried in every wound you've ever carried. Before you were born, before your first breath, before the pain ever touched you, you were already a being of immense wisdom. You stood in the presence of divine intelligence, fully aware of the challenges you would face, and you chose them, not as punishment, but as preparation. You didn't choose an easy path because your soul doesn't evolve through comfort. It evolves through experience, through intensity, through initiation, and pain. Real, raw, unrelenting pain is one of the greatest initiators of all. What if that heartbreak wasn't meant to destroy you, but to crack open the part of you that had forgotten how infinite you truly are? What if the betrayal wasn't a curse, but a sacred push away from false safety and toward the truth of your worth? What if every loss, every illness, every breakdown was your soul's way of aligning you with something greater than the life you were clinging to? You weren't sent here as a blank slate. You arrived with a plan, a soul contract. Not a rigid script, but a sacred agreement, an outline of the lessons, the themes and the turning points that would awaken you, over and over, until you finally remembered who you really are. Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, spoke of this truth repeatedly. In trance, he would describe how souls choose their parents, their bodies, even the timing of their birth, all with the purpose of learning, balancing, and fulfilling unfinished soul work. He said that nothing is by chance, not even your suffering, especially not your suffering. That's why certain patterns have followed you, the relationships that mirror your old wounds, the fears that keep circling back, the illnesses that no doctor can fully explain. These aren't random. They're clues, spiritual breadcrumbs left by your higher self to bring you back to the truth you once knew but had to forget to truly embody. Think of it like this. You didn't just come here to live. You came here to awaken. And awakening almost never happens in the absence of pain. It happens in the collapse. In the night you couldn't stop crying. In the moment everything you built came crashing down. In the silence after the loss, when there's nothing left to distract you from what you truly feel. That's where your soul speaks the loudest. In the wreckage, in the void, in the surrender. And I know that part is terrifying. You've probably been taught to fight your pain, to numb it, to distract yourself until it fades. But pain doesn't fade until it's heard. It will rise again and again until you finally sit with it and ask the only question that matters. What is this here to teach me? Because pain is not your enemy, it's your sacred messenger. There's a reason some of the most powerful healers, teachers, and leaders on this planet have known deep pain, not because they were being punished, but because their mission required depth, their light needed contrast. They had to feel everything in order to transmit healing to others. And maybe you felt that calling too, that sense that you're here for something more, that your life is supposed to mean something beyond survival. That's not your imagination. That's your soul remembering its assignment. But purpose isn't found in perfection. It's found in the moments when you rise again after falling. It's found in the choice to open your heart again after it's been shattered. It's found in the way you show up for others who are hurting, not because you have all the answers, but because you've been there and you survived. Your pain gives you language that no book could ever teach. It gives you empathy that no philosophy could ever offer. It gives you a kind of strength that doesn't need to scream, a strength that radiates from simply existing, open, honest, and awake. You were never broken, you were breaking open. And through that opening, your soul has been pouring back in, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. Each time you allowed yourself to feel, to question, to sit in the darkness and not run from it, you were becoming more of who you really are. So don't dismiss your scars. Don't silence your story. The things you thought disqualified you from being worthy, from being seen, from being loved, those are the very things that make you medicine. Your pain is the gateway to your mission, but only if you allow it to become more than just memory, more than just suffering. When you hold your pain with reverence, when you stop asking why me and start asking what now, that's when the transformation begins. Because you're not here to escape life, you're here to alchemize it. And this is just the beginning. Before you were ever born, before your name, your body, your first breath, there was you. Not the you shaped by this world, but the original you, the eternal self, the one who chose to come here. You were consciousness, pure awareness, not separate from source, but one with it. You had no fear, no pain, no doubt, just knowing. And from that place of infinite perspective, you made a decision. You chose to incarnate into this life. Not randomly, not accidentally, with precision, with purpose, with love. You see, the soul does not enter a life blindly. There is a sacred design, a blueprint, if you will, one that your higher self helps craft with divine intelligence, spiritual guides, and often with the souls of those who will walk this life with you. Some will love you, some will challenge you, some will break your heart wide open, but none of them are here by coincidence. This is the sacred truth of soul contracts. Just like a student choosing a course, your soul selected experiences that would stretch it, shape it, awaken it, and pain, yes, even pain, was part of the plan, not to punish you, but to prepare you, to initiate you into deeper compassion, deeper resilience, deeper purpose. Think of it like entering a school for the soul. Earth is one of the most intense, immersive classrooms in existence. And your curriculum? It was customized for you. Every challenge you would face was reviewed with care. Every heartbreak, every illness, every loss was chosen with a clear goal in mind, to accelerate your evolution. Edgar Cayce, one of the most profound intuitive channels of the 20th century, spoke about this often. In hundreds of his life readings, he revealed how souls choose their circumstances, not just in broad strokes, but with astonishing detail. Family dynamics, physical conditions, even the timing of major life events, all laid out by the soul, in agreement with divine law. He once said, "The entity chooses the surroundings, the abilities, the opportunities for development. These are not by chance, but are part of the whole design of soul growth." Let that sink in. The parents you were born to, the childhood you had, the patterns that haunt you, the pain that still echoes in your heart, these weren't random acts of fate. They were chapters of a longer story, one you helped write. And if that feels hard to accept, it's okay. Your human self may resist this idea, because how could anyone choose betrayal, loss, or trauma? But you must remember, the one who chose wasn't your fearful mind. It wasn't your fragile ego. It was the part of you that sees the full picture, the part that knows you are never alone, never forgotten, never a victim of chaos. Dolores Cannon, a pioneering hypnotherapist who regressed thousands of people into past life memories and pre-birth experiences, found something remarkable. Across cultures, beliefs, and personalities, her clients shared the same insight. Before coming to Earth, they saw the challenges ahead, and they chose them, not because they were easy, but because they were necessary. Over and over again they described pre-life meetings, planning sessions where guides would show them potential lives, each one offering different lessons, some focused on love, others on power, some on loss. And always there was choice. Nothing was forced, but certain paths carried the potential for tremendous growth. You chose yours, and no, you didn't plan every single detail. Life still unfolds with freedom and flow, but the major themes, the lessons your soul needed most, were placed like sacred markers along the way. And if it feels like you've hit those markers hard, it means you're right on time. This isn't karma as punishment, it's karma as balance, as refinement, as the soul saying, I want to grow in ways I haven't yet mastered. And maybe that's why you've always felt a pull, an unexplainable knowing that your life is about more than it appears. Maybe that's why you've never quite fit into the patterns others seem content with, why ordinary goals never fully satisfied you, because your soul didn't come here for comfort. It came here to remember its power by walking through the fire. This is why spiritual awakening is often preceded by collapse, why the old life must fall apart before the real life can begin. It's not punishment, it's alignment. It's the soul redirecting the course back to the mission you designed. And you'll know when you're returning to that path. You'll feel it in your bones. You'll begin to remember things you never read in a book. You'll meet people who feel like mirrors. You'll hear a message, maybe even this one, and something inside you will recognize it. Not as new information, but as something you've known all along. That's the echo of your soul contract. And here's the miracle. Just by being here, listening now, you are activating that memory. You are awakening from the fog of forgetfulness. You are reconnecting with the part of you that never left the presence of Divine Source. You may not remember every detail of the plan, but you can feel its truth. The life you've lived so far, every high, every heartbreak has been leading you back to this point, back to the moment where you begin to live on purpose, not out of habit, not from fear, but from soul. And no matter how far you've wandered, you can never be lost, because your path is sacred. Your pain is sacred, and your presence on this earth right now is no mistake. You're not just surviving this life. You're sculpting your soul through it. You came here to feel everything, to fall, to rise, to remember, to awaken, and now that awakening has begun. Maria was 8 years old the first time she realized she was truly alone. Her mother, once her safe haven, had disappeared again. Another binge, another absence, another night filled with silence where comfort should have been. The house was cold, not just physically, emotionally, a kind of cold that seeps into the bones of a child and tells her without words that she is not safe, not seen, not chosen. Years later, Maria would describe it as the moment her soul woke up inside a human body that was still trying to understand why love was so inconsistent. For most of her life, she carried that pain like a phantom limb. She became an overachiever, desperate to prove her worth. She clung to relationships that mirrored her abandonment. She said yes when she wanted to scream no, all of it, just to feel close to something that resembled love. But deep down, what she craved wasn't love from the world. It was reconnection with her own soul. It wasn't until she was 33, after another relationship ended in betrayal, that something inside her finally broke open. Not in the way we often fear. This wasn't collapse for the sake of destruction, it was collapse for the sake of clarity. The walls she had built to survive could no longer contain the truth trying to rise through her. In the quiet that followed her breakdown, Maria started hearing something new. A whisper, a question, not from her mind, but from somewhere deeper. What if this pain was never meant to hurt you, but to reveal you? That's when everything began to shift. She found a therapist who introduced her to inner child work. She started journaling not just her thoughts, but her soul's memories. She began meditating, not to escape her emotions, but to witness them. And the more she faced the parts of herself she had spent decades avoiding, the more something miraculous began to happen. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. It became sacred. She began to understand that her abandonment was not a life sentence. It was a soul contract. It was the very thing that gave her the depth, the empathy, the intuition that now helped her guide others through their own darkness. Today, Maria is a spiritual counselor, a teacher of trauma-informed healing, and when people ask her what qualifies her, she doesn't list her degrees. She says, simply, "I've been to the bottom. I met my soul there." This is the alchemy of pain. Pain is not here to break you. It's here to burn away the lies you've believed about yourself, the lie that you're not worthy, the lie that you're not enough, the lie that your story disqualifies you from having a purpose. Pain is a sacred fire. It doesn't destroy your soul, it destroys everything that is not your soul. It burns away the ego's need for approval, it burns away the masks you wear to feel safe, it burns away the identities you've outgrown, and once it's finished, something luminous is left behind. The real you. This is why Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." He wasn't being poetic for the sake of beauty, he was telling the deepest truth you'll ever know. Your wounds are not the end, they are the beginning of your becoming. But this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It requires presence, it requires surrender, not surrender as defeat, but surrender as alignment. A sacred letting go of the fight against what already is. You cannot transmute what you refuse to feel. Pain, when fully faced, becomes a portal. It opens you to layers of yourself that were once hidden behind fear. And when you stop resisting it, when you meet it with openness instead of avoidance, it reveals something astonishing, the part of you that cannot be destroyed. The eternal self. The one who watched you cry and never turned away. The one who always knew you were more than what happened to you. The one who carried the blueprint for your healing even when you forgot where you put the map. You see, pain is not your punishment. It's your path. It's the invitation you didn't know you asked for, to return to your truth. And when you begin to walk this path with awareness, something incredible happens. You start seeing the patterns. You start connecting the dots. You realize that the pain you experienced has uniquely equipped you to bring healing to others. Maria didn't just survive her abandonment. She turned it into medicine. She became the loving presence for others that she never had as a child. She didn't do this by denying her pain. She did it by honoring it, by listening to it, by letting it become her teacher. And this is what your pain wants from you, too. Not to be fixed, not to be erased, but to be felt fully, to be held gently, to be listened to like a messenger that arrived not to torment you, but to wake you. Because the truth is, your pain contains wisdom that comfort could never teach you. It teaches you how to stand inside the storm and not abandon yourself. It teaches you how to love more deeply, because you've known what it's like to feel unloved. It teaches you how to trust your inner voice, because the world's noise only led you to more silence. It teaches you how to walk with others in their pain, not as a savior, but as a soul who knows the terrain. That is the alchemy. You are not the same person who walked into the fire, and you were never meant to be. You are becoming more real, more raw, more radiant with every scar you choose to honor instead of hide. So don't run from your pain. Sit with it, breathe with it, thank it, because it has a gift for you. A gift wrapped in discomfort. A gift hidden behind the ache. A gift you'll only receive when you stop asking how to get out and start asking what it came to give you. And when you do, you'll begin to see what Maria saw. Not just pain, but purpose. Not just suffering, but sacredness. Not just survival, but soul. There comes a point in the journey when everything familiar disappears. The beliefs that once comforted you stop working. The roles you played no longer fit. The people you leaned on either drift away or you drift from them. And worst of all, the connection you once felt with the divine, whether through prayer, intuition, or joy, seems to vanish without a trace. This is what mystics and sages have called the dark night of the soul. It's not depression, though it often looks and feels like it. It's not a crisis of failure, it's a crisis of identity. It's the unraveling of who you thought you were, so that the truth of who you really are can finally emerge. And if you're in it now, or have ever walked through it, you know it's not poetic when you're living it. It's terrifying, it's lonely. It's the silence of God in the middle of your prayers. It's the loss of meaning in things that once brought purpose. It's not just emotional darkness, it's spiritual disorientation. But it has a purpose. The dark night of the soul is not a punishment, it is a rite of passage. You are not dying, you are being born. But birth is messy. Birth is painful. Birth often looks like destruction before it reveals creation. James knows that feeling well. For most of his life, James was the guy who had it all figured out. A successful job in finance, a beautiful home, a picture-perfect family. But beneath the surface, something always felt off. He played the part. He checked all the boxes, but it was like he was living someone else's dream. And deep down, he knew it. He had ignored the whispers of his soul for years, until everything fell apart. It started with the sudden loss of his father, an unexpected death that cracked something inside him. Then came the unraveling, the burnout at work, the emotional distance in his marriage, the panic attacks that came out of nowhere. Nothing felt real anymore. He couldn't feel himself anymore. He described it later as falling into a black hole where time didn't move. Days blurred together, joy disappeared, everything felt numb, and the worst part, no one around him could see it. He wore the same mask, but underneath, he was vanishing. One night, after a particularly hollow day, James sat on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., tears silently falling, and said out loud, "God, if you're real, I need to feel you again, because I can't do this anymore." He didn't expect an answer, but something shifted. Not a lightning bolt, not a miracle, but a subtle knowing, a presence, as if the silence itself had been listening the entire time. That was the turning point, not the end of the darkness, but the beginning of communion within it. He began reading books he would have never touched before. Mysticism, spiritual awakening, the writings of St. John of the Cross, who first coined the term dark night of the soul. He found out he wasn't going crazy. He was shedding. The false self, the ego, the identity built on expectations was dissolving, and beneath it, something ancient was beginning to stir, something sacred. James began meditating, not to escape, but to sit with the void. He began journaling, not what he wanted to say, but what his soul was finally ready to voice. And piece by piece, without rushing, without trying to fix himself, he started to remember who he really was. He didn't return to his old life. He didn't want to. He found something better, not more impressive, but more true. He started teaching mindfulness in corporate settings, not because he planned it, but because his co-workers could feel something different in him, and they asked. He started helping men process emotional trauma, because he had lived through it, and slowly he became the kind of man who didn't need to pretend anymore. He stopped surviving and started embodying. That's what the dark night does. It strips away everything false, not to destroy you, but to free you. It's not a grave. It's a womb. But we forget that when we're in it. We resist it. We want the light back, not realizing that this darkness is sacred. It's holy ground. It's where the soul does its deepest work, silently, beneath the surface, far from the noise of the world. And it can't be rushed. You can't skip it. You can't meditate your way around it. You can't think your way out of it. The only way through is through. And yet, that is where the miracle is born. Because when the false identity dies, what's left is truth, pure, radiant, unshakable. When the ego finally stops shouting, you begin to hear the quiet voice of your soul again, and that voice says, "You are not who you thought you were. You are more. You're not the job you lost. You're not the relationship that ended. You're not the body that changed or the plans that fell through. You're not even the version of yourself that broke down on the floor. You are the awareness that witnessed it all. You are the consciousness that survived it. You are the light that remained when everything else disappeared. This darkness isn't punishment, it's initiation. The great mystics knew this. That's why they didn't fear the void. They walked into it, because they knew that in the pitch black, the eyes of the soul begin to open, and when they open, you don't just see differently, you are different. The world doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. You stop chasing things that were never meant to fill you. You stop running from yourself. You stop begging for validation from people who don't even know who they are. And in that quiet, sacred stillness, you begin to feel God again, not as an idea, but as presence, as life, as the very breath moving through you right now. So if you're in the dark night, breathe. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are being remade. And though it may feel like everything is ending, something eternal is just beginning. There are patterns in your life that didn't begin with you. Habits of thought, emotional triggers, relationship dynamics that feel painfully familiar, people who seem to show up with different faces but the same energy. These are not accidents, these are echoes. Not echoes of failure, but of unfinished lessons. Of energies your soul has agreed to understand on the deepest level. This is karma, not as punishment or reward, but as a loop of learning. A sacred cycle where the soul keeps returning to refine, to balance, and to remember what it forgot in the noise of human life. You've likely been told that karma is something you earn, do good, get good, do wrong, face consequences. But that's only a fragment of the truth. Karma is not a cosmic scorecard, it's a mirror. It doesn't punish, it reflects. It shows you what is still unresolved within you by attracting situations that trigger the same core wound until you finally see it. Not with judgment, but with compassion. Alina's life was a clear example of this. From the time she was a teenager, betrayal followed her like a shadow. Friends turning on her, romantic partners hiding secrets, jobs where she gave everything only to be discarded without reason, and each time she blamed herself. Maybe she was too much. Maybe she was not enough. Maybe love just wasn't meant for her. But what Elena didn't realize was that these betrayals were not random. They were karmic patterns, unfinished business her soul had carried across lifetimes. During a healing retreat, guided by a spiritual mentor, Elena entered a deep meditative state, and what she saw wasn't a memory from this life. It was a life she had never consciously recalled. She saw herself in a different body in a time that felt ancient. She was a priestess, deeply intuitive, deeply trusted, until she wasn't. A powerful betrayal by a circle she had given her loyalty to, her voice silenced, her gifts punished, her trust broken. And in that moment everything clicked. The betrayals of this life weren't personal. They were invitations to heal the soul wound of abandonment, not by avoiding connection, but by learning discernment, by setting boundaries, by honoring her intuition, which she had ignored to keep others comfortable. That was the karmic shift. She stopped seeing herself as a victim of bad luck and started seeing herself as a student of energetic truth. She began practicing energetic hygiene, learning to feel people's frequency before inviting them into her space. She stopped overgiving. She stopped saying yes when her body said no. She no longer abandoned herself to avoid being abandoned by others. And slowly the pattern changed. She met people who mirrored her new frequency. Safe people, honest people, soul family. This is the quiet power of karmic transmutation. You don't change your karma by trying harder. You change it by becoming more conscious. When a pattern repeats in your life, especially one that brings pain, your soul is not punishing you. It's highlighting something, a belief, a habit, a blind spot, an invitation to go deeper. Karmic patterns often show up in three main areas: family, relationships, and the body. Family is often the most charged, because your soul may have chosen to return to people it's been entangled with for lifetimes, not for comfort, but for closure. A controlling parent, a distant sibling, a child who challenges you in ways you can't explain. These are not coincidences. These are contracts, not permanent, but purposeful. Relationships, too, are often arenas for karmic healing: the lover who awakens your deepest insecurity, the partner who mirrors your own self-betrayal, the friend who turns into a teacher through pain. These people enter your life to reflect what is unresolved, not because they're meant to stay forever, but because they help you see what you couldn't see on your own. And the body, the body holds karma in such mysterious ways. Chronic illness, persistent fatigue, a recurring injury with no clear medical cause. Sometimes these are karmic signals, your soul speaking through your cells, asking you to slow down, to listen, to heal something deeper than the physical. So, how do you begin to identify these karmic threads? The first step is radical self-honesty. Ask yourself, what themes have repeated in my life despite my best efforts to change them? What pain keeps knocking at my door, wearing new disguises but carrying the same energy? Where do I consistently feel powerless, drained, or unseen? These are the breadcrumbs. Next, create space to witness your soul's wisdom. Meditation is not just a relaxation technique, it's a reunion with your eternal self. One powerful method is past life regression, either guided or self-led, where you allow your intuition to show you what the conscious mind cannot access. You might see images, you might hear voices, you might just feel a wave of knowing that arrives without language. Trust that your soul remembers. And when you allow those memories to surface, not to live in them, but to understand them, you begin to loosen the karmic knot. Another tool is soul journaling. Write to your higher self, literally. Ask, what is this pattern here to teach me? What am I still holding from past experiences or past lives that it's time to release? Let the pen move. Don't filter. Don't analyze. Just allow the truth to rise. And finally, speak aloud the intention to break the loop. Words are spells. Declarations. Try this. I am ready to see the pattern. I am willing to feel the pain. I am choosing to end the cycle, not in anger but in love. I release all contracts that no longer serve my highest evolution. You don't need to force anything. Karma dissolves in the presence of conscious love. You came here to complete something, and each time you respond differently, each time you choose awareness over reaction, compassion over resentment, you shift lifetimes of energy in an instant. That is how powerful you are. You are not bound by your past. You are liberating your lineage. You are healing forward and backward in time. And the more you honor that, the more free you become. There's a moment in every soul's journey when control stops working. When no amount of effort, planning, or pushing can change the outcome. When you're doing everything right by worldly standards, and yet nothing moves, the doors stay closed, the answers don't come, the energy feels stuck, and the more you struggle, the heavier it becomes. That's not failure. That's a spiritual crossroads, and it's calling you toward one thing: surrender. Not as defeat, but as sacred alignment. Pain intensifies when you resist what your soul is asking you to embrace. The more you cling to what no longer serves you, the more painful the release becomes. But when you let go, truly let go, you create space for a higher truth to unfold. One that you didn't have to build or force. just allow. Thomas learned this the hard way. For 15 years, he built a career that looked perfect on paper. A rising executive in a respected tech firm, 6-figure salary, a corner office, a schedule that left no room for stillness. From the outside, he had it all, but inside he felt like he was slowly disappearing. He ignored the signs at first, the constant fatigue, the anxiety he couldn't explain, the whisper that maybe he wasn't where he was meant to be. He pushed through. Because that's what high performers do. They don't stop. They don't question, they just keep going. Until one day, he couldn't. The layoffs came during a sudden company restructuring. No warning, no ceremony. Just a cold conversation and a severance package. The identity he had wrapped his worth around evaporated in a single afternoon. At first it was rage, then panic, then shame. But beneath all that, there was something else. Relief. A silence he hadn't felt in years. An opening he hadn't expected. For weeks he wrestled with what to do next. Should he jump back into another job? Should he start something on his own? He meditated. He journaled. He screamed into pillows. Nothing gave him clarity. Until one morning he stopped asking. He simply said, "Show me. I surrender." That one sentence changed everything. He didn't get an instant answer, but something began to shift. Opportunities that had nothing to do with his old world started appearing. He reconnected with his love for teaching, something he'd abandoned long ago. He started mentoring young men, not for money, but for meaning. One of those conversations led to a podcast invitation. That podcast led to a new platform. That platform grew into a conscious leadership community that now reaches thousands. But it only began after the surrender. Thomas said, "It wasn't until I let go of who I thought I was supposed to be that I made space for who I actually am." This is the mystery of surrender. It looks like loss, but it's actually liberation. Taoism calls this principle Wu Wei, translated as effortless action, the art of not forcing, of moving in harmony with the natural flow of life. In Taoist thought, resistance creates imbalance, but surrender restores alignment, not by doing more but by allowing more. The Tao Te Ching says, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Christian mystics echo the same truth. The phrase, "let go and let God," has been overused, often reduced to a cliché, but beneath those words is a profound energetic law. Letting go is not weakness, it is divine trust in action. It's not about giving up your power, it's about returning it to its source. Because sometimes the answers don't arrive when you strive. They arrive when you become still enough to receive. But why is surrender so hard? Because the ego fears uncertainty. It wants plans, it wants guarantees, it wants the illusion of control. But the soul thrives in the unknown. It knows that uncertainty is the space where miracles are born. Surrender is not about passivity, it's about participation with the divine. It's when you stop trying to push the river and instead allow yourself to flow with it. Think about the most pivotal moments in your life. How many of them came when you finally stopped fighting, when you released the grip, when you accepted what was, without conditions or resistance? That's when grace enters. Not because you earned it, but because you became available to it. And the truth is, surrender doesn't mean giving up your dreams. It means handing them over to a higher intelligence that sees further than you do. It means trusting that what's meant for you won't require self-abandonment to keep. It means knowing that your path may not be linear, but it is loved into existence by something infinitely wise. So, if you're in a moment of collapse right now, if the job ended, if the relationship fell apart, if the vision you had is dissolving before your eyes, you're not being punished, you're being redirected. You're being invited to loosen the grip, to stop resisting what life is trying to give you and to ask a different question. Not, how do I fix this, but what if this is the fix? What if the breakdown is the answer? What if the letting go is the breakthrough? Because the moment you stop trying to hold up the structure of who you were, the truth of who you are can finally begin to rise. This is the sacred paradox. You don't find power by clinging, you find it by releasing. You don't find God in the noise of control, you find God in the silence of surrender. So, if your hands are tired from holding on, open them. If your heart is heavy from trying to force what no longer fits, release it. Say it out loud, even now. I surrender what is no longer mine to carry. I let go, not in fear, but in trust. I open to the higher plan. I return to alignment. And then breathe. Because when you let go, you don't fall. You rise. You may not have known it at the time, but the moment your life changed, the moment the pain arrived, the diagnosis came, the breakdown happened, was right on time. Not on the timeline you wanted, not when it was convenient, but when your soul was ready. There's a rhythm to the unfolding of your life that goes far beyond human logic. It doesn't follow clocks or calendars. It follows consciousness. Growth arrives not when you demand it, but when you can receive it. And often the catalyst for that growth is pain. Not because you're being punished, but because pain is a powerful awakener. And it comes when you've matured enough, evolved enough, to finally face what you came here to remember. That timing isn't random, it's sacred. Robert didn't understand that at first. For years he lived what he thought was a good life, a quiet life. He worked in accounting, had a comfortable home, raised 2 children, stayed married for over 20 years. He never questioned much, he just kept moving, head down, bills paid, responsibilities met. But beneath the surface he felt numb, not unhappy, just flat, like something essential was missing but he couldn't name it. Until his body spoke. The diagnosis was autoimmune, a slow, invisible kind of deterioration, fatigue that no amount of sleep could fix, brain fog, muscle pain, a sense that his life was dimming from the inside out. Doctors offered prescriptions. None of them worked. And that's when the real search began. What started as a medical crisis turned into a spiritual one. Robert began reading books on energy medicine, listening to interviews with spiritual healers, meditating in his backyard under the stars. Something inside him stirred, something ancient, something alive. He remembered how, as a child, he used to sense energy, how he would talk to trees, how he would feel other people's emotions in his own body. He had shut it all down to survive the expectations of adulthood, but the illness cracked that armor wide open. Through journaling, breath work, and countless nights of silent prayer, Robert began to hear his soul again, not with words, but with knowing. He realized that the illness hadn't come to destroy him, it had come to wake him. It arrived not as punishment for how he'd lived, but as an invitation to finally live as his true self. The sensitive one, the intuitive one, the one who wasn't made for spreadsheets and small talk, but for presence, peace, and healing. Now, in his late 50s, Robert teaches energy balancing and soul retrieval, not as a guru, just as a man who knows what it means to forget who you are and what it takes to remember. He often says, if the illness hadn't slowed me down, I would have never stopped long enough to find myself. That's the wisdom of divine timing. It's easy to look back and wonder why something didn't happen sooner, why the awakening didn't come in your 20s, why the clarity took so long, why the healing path waited until after the collapse. But the truth is, it happened exactly when it was supposed to, because the soul doesn't rush. It doesn't measure life in milestones or compare timelines. It waits, it ripens, it grows in silence, preparing you to hold what you once couldn't. Neville Goddard once said, "Change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Do not try to change people. They are only messengers telling you who you are. Revalue yourself and they will confirm the change." But even deeper than that, Neville taught that imagination creates reality in perfect rhythm, not instantaneously, but in alignment with who you are becoming. There is no such thing as delay, only divine preparation, and what you call waiting is often your soul rearranging the inner architecture of your being, clearing out what no longer fits, so that your new life has room to land. Think about it. The love didn't come until you were finally ready to receive without losing yourself. The opportunity didn't open until you stopped tying your worth to outcomes. The awakening didn't happen until your soul knew you were strong enough to handle the truth of who you really are. This is the sacred rhythm of soul evolution. It does not skip steps. It does not cater to ego. It unfolds when your inner frequency matches the reality your soul has already chosen. And yes, it often looks like nothing is happening, like life is stagnant. But what if that stillness is actually sacred gestation? What if the delay is really protection? What if the timeline you're judging is actually perfect? The seasons know when to change. The moon doesn't rush to become full. The seed in the soil doesn't apologize for taking time to root before it blooms. And neither should you, because your journey is not a race, it's a revelation. And every step, every seeming setback, is part of that unfolding. When you start to trust this rhythm, everything changes. You stop forcing, you stop comparing, you stop measuring your worth by speed, and you start listening. You start honoring the quiet yes and the sacred no. You start realizing that every delay, every detour, every redirection was grace. Not obvious grace, not easy grace, but grace nonetheless. So, if it feels like your life hasn't started, if it feels like you're behind, remember this. The soul's timing is not linear. It's spiral, layered, timeless. And everything you're meant for is already within you, blooming on a schedule that is beyond your understanding but never beyond your alignment. So breathe. Right here, right now. You are not late. You are not lost. You are perfectly on time for the life your soul came to live. Sometimes the shift doesn't come with fanfare. It comes quietly, in a moment you never wanted, in a moment that takes your breath away and doesn't give it back right away. That's how it happened for Sarah. She had always believed in a gentle kind of spirituality. She meditated. She believed in signs from the universe. She lit candles and whispered prayers. But nothing in her life had prepared her for the night her infant daughter stopped breathing. No warning, no time, just silence. And then, the silence inside her. For months, she couldn't speak about it, couldn't pray, couldn't write, couldn't even look at the sky without feeling betrayed by the very God she had trusted her whole life. People offered well-meaning words. Everything happens for a reason. She's in a better place. But none of it touched the depth of her grief. Because this wasn't just pain. It was the death of identity, the death of a part of herself. She didn't want transformation, she wanted her child back. And yet, in the very heart of that devastation, something began to stir. It didn't come through words. It came through presence. One morning she sat on her daughter's bedroom floor, surrounded by tiny clothes and half-packed boxes she couldn't bear to move. And she stopped trying to escape the pain. She stopped pretending she was okay. She just was. And in that stillness, something broke open. She didn't hear a voice. She didn't see an angel. But she felt something undeniable. A warmth. A knowing. A message that didn't come from outside her, but through her. This pain will become your purpose, if you let it. She didn't understand it at first. How could something so cruel become something sacred? But over time she started listening to the pain instead of fighting it. She began to write, not from the part of her that was trying to heal, but from the part of her that had been forever changed. She shared pieces of her story anonymously at first, and people responded. They said, "I feel seen. You're saying what I couldn't. You're helping me breathe again." Today, Sarah is a grief guide. She sits with mothers in hospital rooms, in hospice care, in the aftermath of loss. Not to offer easy answers, but to be a witness, to hold space, to let them know that they too can survive the unthinkable. She doesn't say everything happens for a reason. She says, not everything can be explained, but everything can be transformed. And that is the miracle. The miracle isn't that the pain disappears. It's that the pain reveals something deeper, something ancient, something that was dormant in you, waiting to be awakened. Because transformation doesn't mean going back to who you were. It means becoming who you really are. And that becoming often begins where the old self ends. So how do you begin to mine your own pain for wisdom? Start by asking a different kind of question. Not, why did this happen to me? But, what is pain trying to awaken in me? Write that down. Sit with it. Don't rush the answer. Let it rise slowly, like dawn. You might hear a whisper. You might see a memory. You might feel the stirrings of something you haven't felt in years. That's your soul speaking. And if the answer doesn't come with words, it's okay. Pain speaks in layers. Sometimes the answer is a feeling, a vibration, a shift in breath. Trust that. Now, if you're open to it, take a moment to experience a short visualization, one that helps you connect with the part of you that knew this pain was coming and chose it anyway. Close your eyes gently. Take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Again, inhale through the nose and release. Now, imagine yourself standing in a vast luminous space. It's not Earth, but it feels familiar, safe, infinite. Ahead of you stands a being of light, but as you move closer you realize it's you. Not your human self, your soul self, the version of you that exists beyond this lifetime, wise, radiant, untouched by fear, completely at peace. Compassion. Because they remember the plan, the purpose, the promise. They show you glimpses of your life, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the moments you thought would break you. And then they show you something else, the strength you gained, the compassion you now carry, the wisdom that couldn't have been born any other way. They reach out and place a hand over your heart, and in that touch you feel it, not just the pain, but the meaning. Not because it was easy, but because it was sacred. You ask them with the deepest sincerity, why did I choose this? And without words they answer, because you were ready, because you are strong, because this is how the light would enter. And you wanted to carry the light. Take a breath. Let that truth sink into your body. Now slowly bring your awareness back to the present moment. Wiggle your fingers, feel the seat beneath you, and open your eyes when you're ready. You're still here, and that means your mission is still unfolding, no matter what has happened, no matter what you've lost. You are not the same as you were before the pain. You are more present, more honest, more attuned to what matters. And from that place your transformation becomes inevitable, not because you force it, but because you allow it. Your pain is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your soul's emergence. You are not here just to survive the wound, you are here to transmute it into wisdom. And as you do, you become the medicine. There's a quiet moment after the grief has moved through you, after the darkness has taught you its lessons, when you realize something extraordinary. Your heart is still beating, but it doesn't beat the same way it used to. It beats with more presence, more empathy, more depth. Pain doesn't harden the awakened soul, it softens it. It cracks open the surface so that something luminous can pour through. Something that's not just for you, but for others. Because suffering, when fully honored, makes you usable by the divine. It's not that God caused your pain, but through your healing you become a vessel for healing in others. Not because you're perfect, not because you're invincible, but because you understand. You've walked through the fire, you've looked into the abyss, you've screamed at the heavens and heard nothing until you finally heard everything in the silence. That kind of transformation leaves a mark, not a scar of shame, but a signature of depth. And from that depth, something sacred arises. Service. Not service out of obligation, not because you want to be a hero, but because your heart simply can't look away anymore. This is where your mission begins. Not when your life is polished, not when the pain disappears, but when the broken pieces start forming a mosaic of meaning, when your story, raw and real, becomes a bridge for someone else to cross their own darkness. You begin to understand your pain was never just about you. It was a doorway to connection, a pathway to purpose. This is the archetype of the wounded healer. In mythology, it's Chiron, the centaur who was both teacher and outcast, immortal yet in pain. Wounded by a poisoned arrow he could not remove, Chiron could never heal himself fully, but through his wound he became the greatest healer of others. Balance it. Shaban. This activity I've known for years. Ptolemy, we tell intricate stories to help us. Chiron's story is not just legend. It's a tender place that never quite goes numb, no matter how much time has passed. And that very wound is holy. It makes you approachable. It makes you real. It keeps you from preaching and moves you into presence. You stop offering solutions. You start offering space. You stop speaking from the head. You start speaking from the soul. And in that shift, something profound happens. People feel safe around you. They open up. They soften. They remember something inside themselves just by being near you. That's not charisma. That's energy. Because when your pain is transmuted into purpose, your frequency changes. You become a transmitter of compassion, a living embodiment of what's possible, not because your life is easy, but because you radiate truth. People can feel it. Even if they don't have the words for it, they sense the calm in your presence, the softness in your eyes, the way you listen without rushing into fix. You've become the healer you once needed, not in a clinical sense, but in a soul sense. And this doesn't require a title. You don't need to be a coach, a therapist, or a spiritual leader. You can be a barista, a parent, a nurse, a writer, an artist, a friend. Healing moves through roles. It doesn't require them. Because it's not about what you do, it's about who you are. And who you are now, after the pain, after the shedding, after the surrender, is someone who carries medicine. Your words carry it. Your silence carries it. Your story carries it. And when you share your story, not the polished version but the real one, you give others permission to share theirs. You become a living invitation. You can survive this. You can find meaning. You are not alone. That is sacred service. It's the mission your soul chose long before this life began, to awaken through pain and then to awaken others, not by force, but by being. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to be fully healed to begin. You just need to be willing. Willing to show up. Willing to be seen. Willing to say, I've been there. I still carry this. But I've found something on the other side. And I believe you will too. And that energy, genuine, heart-led, grounded in experience, is more powerful than any sermon, because it's real. It's rooted in something ancient. It's not coming from the mind. It's coming from the soul. And your soul didn't come here just to learn. It came to serve through what it learned. That's the paradox. You think your pain disqualified you, but it was preparing you. You think the wound made you weak, but it made you true. You think you lost something, but what you lost was the illusion of separation, from yourself, from others, from the divine. And now, on the other side of that illusion, you can finally begin the mission you were born to fulfill. Not in grand gestures, not in viral posts, but in the quiet way you hold space for the people who are still breaking, in the way you speak life over someone when they've forgotten their worth, in the way you embody grace when others expect judgment. That is the real spiritual work. It's not about escaping the world. It's about walking through it with eyes wide open, heart cracked open, soul fully online. So if you've been asking what your purpose is, maybe you already know. Maybe it's not something you find, maybe it's something you become. And maybe you're already becoming it right now. There's something beautiful that happens when you make it to the other side of your pain, not because everything becomes easy, not because you never hurt again, but because now you understand. You understand who you are beneath the stories, beneath the fear, beneath the mask the world asked you to wear. You understand what it means to rise, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And in that rising you become something rare. Someone who doesn't just talk about transformation, you embody it. You become proof that the fire didn't destroy you, it refined you. You are the alchemist, the one who takes the heavy and makes it holy, the one who turns grief into grace, fear into wisdom, suffering into service. This has always been the deeper meaning of spiritual awakening, not escaping the human experience, but descending into it fully, and then lifting the world with your presence. You don't need to go back to who you were. That version of you did their job. They got you here. But now, it's time to return to something even older, even truer, to the soul that chose this life, the soul that knew the pain would come and chose to walk through it anyway, the soul that saw your mission not as something outside of you, but as something you would become through every challenge. That soul, you, is still here, and they are proud of how far you've come. They watched you shatter. They watched you rise. They watched you say yes to life again when you could have stayed numb, disconnected, bitter. They watched you carry pain with dignity, with silence, with prayer, with breath. And they know you're ready now, not for perfection, but for embodiment, to live from the inside out, to speak with the voice of someone who remembers, to love with the depth of someone who has been cracked open by loss, to serve, not because you must, but because you can't help it anymore. You are no longer seeking a purpose, you are being the purpose. Every time you choose to be present instead of dissociating, every time